Today is the 1st of July, 1958. My name is Fred White. I'm sitting in my grandmother White's front room, and we are going to talk with grandmother about many of the things that she did while she was a girl. I think it's very important that we all have an association with our grandparents. I certainly remember the many days that I spent in the summertime with my grandmother here at Spanish Fork when we lived in Green River, Wyoming, and we would come down here for the summer. First of all, I think I would like my grandmother White to tell us how old she is and where she was born, and when she was born, and who her father and her mother was. Would you give that to us, Grandma?
Yeah. I was born, I could tell that first.
Yes.
I was born in Mona, Juab County, in 74, March the 16th.
Who is your father, Grandmother?
Richard James Burraston.
And your mother?
Emma Price Burraston.
And were they born in Utah?
No, they were born in England.
Both of them?
Yes. Father was born in Worcestershire. Mother was born in Devonshire.
And how old were they when they left England?
Father was 13, and Mother was 21.
And did they come directly to Utah, or did they live somewhere else in the United States before they came to Utah?
Shall I tell about Mother pulling a handcart?
Well, yes, that'd be fine, Grandma.
Mother pulled a handcart across the plains, and she lived in Pleasant Grove at first. And Father came with the ox teams, and he lived in Pleasant Grove too at first. And then they moved to Goshen.
Do you know about when this was? What the year they moved from Pleasant Grove to Goshen?
No, I don't.
Well, do you know when they moved to Mona?
I don't know.
What did your father do for a living?
He was a farmer and a stock raiser.
What kind of stock did he raise? Did he raise dairy cows or beef cattle?
He raised beef cattle and good horses. And we had sheep on the ranch too.
You say the ranch, Grandma. How large was this ranch?
Oh, it was about 400 acres, I guess.
And did the people irrigate? Did Grandfather
Yes,
Burraston irrigate?
They irrigated. They got their water out of Willow Creek Canyon.
And let's see, where would that be? That's
right under Nebo.
right under
Mount
Nebo.
Nebo.
Did they have a dam up there, or how did they get the water out of the creek into the?
It just came out of the mountains, and then they caught it with their ditches.
What kind of crops did they raise? Did they raise alfalfa or?
They raised corn and sugar cane. Father raised the first corn and the first sugar cane that was ever raised in that valley.
Well, fine. What did they do with the sugar cane after they had raised it?
Made molasses. Father made molasses and freighted it down to Scipio and all down through there to sell to the people. And he hauled these.
Did they haul it in wagons or?
Yes, he hauled on the running gears of the wagon.
And was Was there a railroad at Scipio, or why did they just take it down to Scipio to sell it?
I don't think the railroad was in there then.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting.
The railroad was put through Mona in about 78.
Let's see, how old were you then?
Well, I was born 74. I'd be about 4 years old. I can just remember.
Well, that's very, very interesting. I guess the railroad trains that came through in those days were very much different than the ones we see today.
Yes. Very, very much difference in them. Well, when the railroad came in there, we heard Father and Mother telling us that it was coming through Mona and going on through Nephi. And we were so tickled about it that we wanted to see what the train looked like. So Father took us 3 sisters down to the railroad to let us see the engine and the cars. And we was real pleased about it. Then it went on to Nephi. We had a station right there at our place.
You had a station at your place. Was there any special reason why the railroad had a station there?
Yes. Father shipped quite a few cattle, and he was a cattle buyer.
Did the railroad take anything else?
Yes, they took anything that came in there to be shipped from there. They took it. We shipped butter from there all the time. We made butter.
Well, that's
and
very
cheese.
Fun.
I helped my mother make butter and cheese.
And how old were you when you helped your mother make the butter and the cheese?
I was about 10. And I liked to help her all the time.
What other chores did you have to do?
Well, I used to skim the milk for Mother. We had a rock cellar, and we had our milk in pans. We had to skim it every morning and every night.
I guess the cellar was like our refrigerator today. You didn't have refrigerators in those days, did you?
No, we just had cellars, and we had a nice one. It was all rocked up nice.
And that kept the milk cool, and then you'd take the cream off and make butter and cheese from the cream?
Yes.
Wow.
Not cheese from the cream.
You'd use the skimmed milk for the cheese.
We made butter one morning and cheese the next with the fresh milk.
And did you sell this butter and cheese, or did you use it for your own family?
Yes, we sold some cheese just around the neighborhood and had all we wanted ourselves, and we shipped our butter into Salt Lake, into M.J. Harding in Salt Lake.
I recall many years ago you telling me about your mother making, was it leather gloves or knit gloves?
Buckskin gloves.
Buckskin gloves, that's right.
That the Indians used to stay to our place quite a bit because we had a spring right below the house. And they came there to camp and got hay for their horses. And they gave Mother buckskin because they thought they was paying her for what they got, and they was nice. They liked to come there. They'd chat with the boys and the father. We used to give them bread. I remember one day, Mother cut a cheese and gave them about a quarter of it, and some skippers got in it. And the one Indian laughed, and he says, "Will these bite?" And she says, "No, they won't bite."
A skipper, what's a skipper, grandmother?
It's a little bit of a worm.
Oh.
That if you're not awful careful, sometimes they get in the cheese.
Do they harm the cheese, or?
Well, of course they eat it if they're in there long enough. You have to watch.
Mm-hmm. Did you have other chores other than helping your mother prepare food and do things around the house?
Yes, I helped milk just as soon as I was large enough. I helped the boys milk. We had quite a few cows.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 4 brothers and 4 sisters.
And I guess each one had their own job?
Yes, we all had our own job.
Well, that's fine. I'm wondering, grandmother, uh, about schools. Our children today go to school. Did you go to school?
Well, we lived 2 miles from Mona, and I didn't get to go to school till I was 11. We had to walk 2 miles.
Did how many grades did this school have? Did it go up to high school?
Yes, they went up to the 10th grade.
To the 10th grade?
Yes.
And how many children in your day completed the 10th grade or high school? Were there very many?
Well, Mona was a small place, but I suppose maybe there was about 10 that graduated.
And how many children that age in the town of Mona were there? I'm wondering how many of the students in those days had the opportunity to actually complete high school. I understand that not very many of them were able to complete high school.
No, there wasn't. That's what I say. There was about 10 that completed it.
Mm-hmm. Did your brothers, did they help your father on the farm, or?
Yes, they helped plow and dig post holes and make fence, go to the canyon and get cedar wood and oak pegs to peg their poles through the posts.
You say peg the poles to the post. Did they have nails?
They didn't use nails. They put these pegs right, they bored a hole through the pole and put the oak peg through the pole and through the post. Mm-hmm. And that held them there solid.
Well, that's a lot like the tabernacle, isn't it? They pegged a lot of the beams in the tabernacle rather than using nails.
Yes.
Did you have much contact with the towns around Mona? Did you get to go to Nephi, or I guess Payson was a town then, wasn't it?
Payson was the best town, but we didn't get to go there. We didn't go anywhere. We went to Nephi once in a while, besides Mona.
And when you went to Nephi or to the towns around, what did you do?
We went there to visit friends of fathers and mothers. Father was one of the bank men. He went to the bank quite a bit, and we ride over with him when he went.
This brings a question to my mind. When we go to town, we usually shop for food and for clothing. The thing I'm wondering about, did you make your own clothing, or did you buy clothing?
Yes, my mother was a seamstress. She made all our clothing, even the boys' suits and father's suits. And she made the boys' hats and fancy buckskin gloves. And she got $1.50 a pair for the plain gloves and $2 for the gauntlet gloves and the dress gloves that was worked on the back, embroidered on the back.
The cloth that your mother used in making the clothes, did she make the cloth, or did she buy that at the store?
No, they got it at Salt Lake.
At Salt Lake?
Yes.
And did you buy this cloth that originally came from Salt Lake in Mona, or did you buy it in
we bought
Payson?
it right from Mona, and sometimes salesmen came around and she got some off them.
Fine. That bong or ring in the background is our grandmother's clock, and it has just struck 4:30 in the afternoon. And this is a very interesting clock. Could you tell us a little bit about how you got the clock, Grandma?
Yes. We bought that clock in Eureka in 1900. We gave $4 for it, and it's been a wonderful clock. And it's going to be Fred's when we're through with it. And I hope he's happy with it.
Well, I'm certainly sure that I will be, Grandmother. I've always been fascinated by the clock. I'm wondering, Grandpa White wasn't raised in Mona, was he?
No, Grandpa White was raised in Goshen. And that's where I met him and married him. We was married in 1987.
Mm-hmm. Were you working in Goshen, or why were you in Goshen when you met Grandfather White?
Yes, we moved there and we worked there. We got tired of milking cows.
Oh, I see. Well, I can understand that, because I remember when I came out of the mission field and my father had sold the cows that we had. I was happy about that myself. I've milked a few cows, but I like to do things better than milk cows.
I rode horseback from the time I was 10 till I was 20. Took the cows to the pasture back and forth.
How far was the pasture from your home, Grandma?
A half a mile.
Mm-hmm.
There was plenty of water there and good feed. That's where the Burraston fish pond stands now today. We had a big frame home.
I understand this home is still standing. We were down there last summer, I believe, and took a picture of it.
Yes, it's still standing there now.
And this brings something up. On the highway between Mona and Nephi, there's a brick building, and my father told me that this was your father's home. Is that right? He used the bottom part, I understand, for a granary.
Yes, that's right. He sold this big place and moved on a 40-acre field, and he farmed that and lived there and kept his horses. And
this was after the family was growing and married?
yes,
mm-hmm.
After the family was grown. My mother was dead. I forget what year she died.
I'm wondering now if you could tell us a little bit about the many places that you've lived after you married Grandfather White. I know my father was born in Eureka, and some of his brothers were born there, and some were born in Goshen. Isn't that right?
Yes. We built a little 3-roomed home, brick home in Goshen, and we couldn't quite pay for it. And we had to go to Eureka to finish paying for it.
Let me interrupt here. Did Grandfather work in Eureka?
Yes, he worked at the Blue Rock mine. He run the trolley bucket from the mine down to the dump. We stayed there 3 years.
And Uncle Clyde, how old would he be?
He was a year old when we moved to Eureka.
Mm-hmm. And then Daddy must have been born the second year you were in Eureka.
Yes.
And were any of the other brothers born in Eureka?
They was all born in Goshen, but Grant.
Oh, mm-hmm. And then after Grandfather worked at the mine and made enough money to pay for the home in Goshen, you moved back to Goshen, is that correct?
Yes, we moved back to Goshen. And he bought a few calves and rented his father's farm, and he made a livelihood that way.
Mm-hmm.
Till we moved to Spanish Fork.
And you moved in Spanish Fork about 1914, is that?
16.
1916.
Yes.
And the house we're living in now, is that the house that you moved into when you came to Spanish Fork?
We moved into another big brick home closer in town, but he couldn't handle his stock there, so we moved down on 9th North and Main in Spanish Fork, where we are now.
This other home was on 5th North, wasn't it?
Yes.
And see, 1916. That's when you moved here?
Yeah.
My father would have been 16 years old, and grandfather was farming then, was he not?
Yes.
And I guess all the boys were helping, were they?
Yes. We raised beets and all kind of grain.
And where was grandfather's farm? Was it right around right near to Spanish Fork, or was it where exactly was it?
Yes, it's about a mile from northwest of town. And then we owned a ranch down by the lake, but we sold that. And he was still farming when he passed away.
And when did he pass away? That was 1930.
33.
33. Mm-hmm. Let's see, how old was he then?
He would be 59.
59.
Yes. And then the boys took the farm over and finished paying for it and made a livelihood.
Were all the boys at this time on the farm, or were some of the boys, my father's brothers, were they working somewhere else?
Yes, they was all on the farm, but Clyde, he was working for the sugar factory.
In Utah here? Or?
Yes. Then he went to Pocatello and worked there.
Mm-hmm.
Then he came back and went to Rock Springs, Wyoming, and went into the merchant business. And his brother Dale bought him out, and his brother Dale's still there. And Clyde is working in the bank for an insurance company.
And the rest of the brothers, or Uncle Frank lives in Salt Lake, doesn't he?
Yes. Frank is working for the Utah Oil Company. Mm-hmm. And Grant is chief of police of Spanish Fork, and he has a nice farm and some nice cattle.
And Uncle Lois?
Uncle Lois has a farm, and he's head butcher in the food liner in Spanish Fork.
All your children were boys, grandmother. Did you ever want to have a little girl in your family?
I wanted a little girl, the first one, but I didn't get it, so then I didn't care. I was perfectly satisfied with my lovely boys. And they're some of the best.
It's really nice that we can accept things as they come, and I'm certain that from my experience with you, that's the way it has always been. Why don't we rest a little while now, grandmother, and I'll turn off the recorder and we'll rest just a little while.
I'm not tired when you touch.
I think we can start again, grandmother, by talking a little bit about water again. You mentioned before that you got your water from, for irrigation purposes, from Willow Creek. How did you obtain your drinking water and the water that you used in the house? I'm certain that you didn't have water piped into the house like we have it today and have the water come out of a water faucet. How did you get your water?
Well, we had a well in Mona, and we had one on the ranch. And the one on the ranch was 12 foot deep. And it was lovely, clear water, as the soil is gravelly out there. But we had to carry our wash water around the house.
And you carried this from the well into the house?
Yes, and we wound it up with a windlass, a bucket.
Oh, mm-hmm. That's very different than it is today. All we have to do is go to the faucet.
Yeah, we washed on the board.
Washed on the board. Now, is this like a scrubbing board?
Yes, a scrubbing board.
Was it made of metal or wood, or what was it made of?
It's made of, I guess, aluminum. I don't know. It's just like aluminum.
Mm-hmm. And today we all have washing machines, and most of us have automatic washing machines. When did you first get your first washing machine?
In 1905.
And what kind of a washing machine was this? Could you describe it for us?
Yes, it was a Western washers. You had to turn the hand.
It didn't have a motor then?
No. I didn't have a motor till 1913.
Did this washing machine, the one that you turned by hand, did it have an agitator in like washing machines today, or how did it work?
It had a paddle that swung back and forth. A paddle kind of like a churn dash.
Oh, that's very interesting. How did you heat your water?
On the stove. We had our water on the stove in a boiler. We only had just a little bit of a stove.
And you heated all your water on this small stove?
Yes, they had to chop cedar wood to burn to wash with.
You didn't have coal or gas or anything like that. You used this cedar wood. I'm wondering what you used for soap. How did you...
Well, my mother made her own homemade soap out of cracklings of the hog fat, any kind of grease. Done good washing those days. Of course, we don't think it does now.
Now, since you didn't have any motors in that, it certainly didn't have electricity. I'm wondering how you could see at night. What kind of light did you have in your home?
Mother made candles. I used to make her help make candles.
And what did you make the candles out of, Grandmother?
Out of tallow. And then we used to burn another little light that was fixed in a tin dish, and you put bacon grease in it and twisted a rag and put the rag in the dish of grease and then lit that. My mother used to make gloves by this light and by candle.
Did you have very many books to read?
No, we didn't have but very few books.
Do you recall what any of these books were?
There was church books, the Bible and the Book of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenants, and story books, Youth Companion. We took the Youth Companion all the time for the boys and girls.
The Youth Companion, what was this, a magazine or?
It was a very clean little paper with good stories in, good clean stories for boys and girls.
Was this printed in Utah or was it printed somewhere else?
Well, I don't remember, but I think it was printed in Salt Lake.
I see. That brings up another question to my mind. Today we have telephones and all sorts of excellent means of communication. How did you communicate with people, your neighbors, and people in the next town in those days? You didn't have telephones, did you?
No. If it was walking distance, we walked and had a visit, and us children played. But if it was very far, we had to go in the wagon. And then after a while, we got a one-horse buggy that we drove with a little horse in it.
Were the roads very good in those days? They weren't paved, I'm sure.
They was real good from Mona to Nephi and on to Payson, as the soil was gravelly. But I don't know much about farther on.
And how long did it take you to go from Mona to Nephi? That's about 6 miles, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you recall how long it would take you to go in the buggy?
No, I don't recall.
This communication, I'm wondering, were there any mail? Did you receive any mail when you lived in Mona?
Yes, we had to walk at times for our mail, and then at times we drove the pony.
I guess after the railroad came through, mail was delivered by the railroad, or how was it delivered?
It was sent down from different places into Mona, wherever it come from, and from Nephi.
Did you have a mailman that traveled through that country, or?
No, we had to go and get it.
Did you have to go to Nephi, or?
We went to Mona, as
to
we
Mona.
lived close to Mona. We lived 2 miles from Mona.
I see. I'm wondering about the furnishings in your house when you were living in Mona with your father and mother and the rest of the family. What kind of furnishings did you have? Furniture? Was it homemade furniture, or could you describe
Well,
it for us?
I wouldn't recall that because I was only 2 years old when I moved to the ranch.
Now, the ranch is...
2 miles south of Mona, between Nephi and Mona.
That's the same place as we call Burraston's Pond today.
Yes, a fish pond.
Mm-hmm. When you lived at Burraston's Pond, did your father make the furniture, or was this furniture bought?
Well, they had it before they left Goshen. I don't know where they got their furniture.
I see.
We bought one piece, and that's a chest of drawers, and I still have it. And it's it's about 90 years old.
Mm-hmm. I guess it's still in pretty good shape, too.
Yes, it's in good shape.
I know in those days they made things to last for a long time. There were 8 children in your family, is that correct?
There was 10. My father we had 8. And my mother was married before, and she had 2.
And did the 2 children that she had before she married your father, did they live with you?
The one did, but the girl died before.
Oh, I see.
She died a baby.
I see. And I'm wondering, Patricia was just here a few minutes ago, and she was asking grandmother about conditions for birth of children. I'm wondering if grandmother would like to say just a few words about that.
Well, the birth of children, the midwife waited on most of them.
Could I interrupt you? Was this midwife trained, or was it just one of the neighbors that came in to help you while the baby was born?
The ones that waited on my mother was just plain women, midwives that waited on them. But with my children, I had a doctor with part, and a trained nurse with some, and I had 2 with just an old lady.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, this is really changing the subject, I'm wondering about what you did as young boys and girls to entertain yourself. How did you spend any leisure time that you did have?
Well, we didn't play much in the daytime, but at night, neighbors came. We had 4 neighbors. And they had 4 children our age. And they all had 4 children our age, and we went back and forth and played in the evening. It's about 9 o'clock, and then we all went back home.
You said you played. Did you play games? Or?
Yes, we played hide and go seek and steal the stick. And
these are all outdoor games.
yes, all outdoor games.
When it was cold, did the neighbors come, say in the wintertime when there was a lot of snow on the ground? Did you have many visitors?
Yes, they came and we played in the house for a while.
And what kind of games did you play then?
We played button, button, who's got the button?
You didn't have games like we have today, Monopoly and all.
No, we didn't have any of those games.
Most of the games that you had were games that you could either play outside like hide and seek, or games that had simple little things like button, button.
Yes, in the house.
In the house. Did you have any musical instruments in your home?
We didn't have any music at all.
Did other people around your neighbors, did they have musical instruments?
The one family had an organ.
What I'm wondering about, did you get together as a group occasionally and sing songs, or have musical entertainment at all?
Yes, we got together and Mother would lead the songs. She was a good singer, and we'd sing.
Do you recall any of these songs?
Oh, my Father, come, come, ye saints.
Most of them were church songs.
Yes.
This brings up an important point, and I'm very much interested in it. Did you go to church on Sunday, and what sort of church organization and church building and anything about the church that you can remember in your early childhood, say while you were living in Mona or on the ranch?
On the ranch, while I was small, they had church and school in an old home 2 miles away. And that's where we walked to church and Sunday school. But I wasn't large enough to go to school then.
Do you remember when they first built the building that they used only for church in that area, or did they ever have one when you lived there? You said that church was held in a house. Was this someone's home, or was it?
Yes, it was an old home that they discarded.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
They did have a building that they had for the church and the school.
Yes, after that they built a meeting house and a schoolhouse in Mona. Mm-hmm. And the schoolhouse was built when I was 12 years old. What year did that be?
That would be 18... Let's see, you were born in 1874. That would be 1886. Do you know whether this building is still standing?
Yes, it's still standing. It was built in 1876.
Mm-hmm.
And the meeting house, I don't remember when it was built. It was built before I was born.
I see. Could you tell us a little bit about preserving food? We have in the grocery stores today lots of canned goods. How did you preserve food when you were growing up then?
Well, Mother had 4-gallon jars and 2 or 3 different sizes of jars. And she used to make Potawatomi plum preserve and fill some of these jars, and ground cherry preserve and gooseberry preserve. But we didn't have any fresh fruit till I was about 14. Then we bottled fruit. We got our fruit from Springville, peaches and pears. We bottled it in those bottles, 2-quart bottles.
You said that they put up Potawatomi preserves in large 4-gallon containers. Did they have bottles in those days?
Well, I guess there was some in the state, but we didn't have any.
You didn't have any?
No.
And what about meat? How did you preserve meat? Or did you just eat fresh meat only, and when the fresh meat was gone, you didn't?
No, we killed a beef once in a while in the winter, but we cured our own, Father and Mother cured our own pork. Some people smoked it, but we didn't. We didn't have a smoking house. So we just salted our sugar and salt pork.
You rubbed the sugar and the salt on the outside of
Yeah.
the pork, and then
Let it stand
let
till
it
it was
stand.
cured.
Did it? I guess it had quite a salty taste, didn't it?
Well, you learn to salt it so it's just right. But some people put theirs in brine, but we never did, because it's quite salty.
Yes. We were talking a few minutes ago about preserving food, and I mentioned that today we have a lot of canned vegetables and meat and all sorts of food in the large grocery stores. Could you tell us when you can first remember of going shopping in a grocery store? Did they have grocery stores in Mona when you were young?
No, they didn't have grocery stores. Had groceries, but yes, they had coffee and like that, but no green grocery.
I guess some of the canned goods they had. There was a grocery store in Mona, though, in when you were, say, 14 and 18.
Yes.
In the 1800s, 1880s.
Yes.
But about all they had was canned goods.
Just the canned goods.
Mm-hmm.
Sugar and rice, beans.
This brings up something that I'd like to ask you about. How did you obtain the flour that you used to make bread? I'm sure that you used a lot of bread. Did you make your own flour, or how did you obtain this?
Yes, they made their own flour. They took their wheat to Nephi. There's a grist mills at Nephi. They'd take a load of wheat and have it ground and bring it back. We always got enough to last us a year.
Do you have any idea how much this would be? Was it several sacks? Was it sacked in...
I think Father always took 50 bushel.
50 bushel. And did he bring it back in bushel baskets, or was it in a sack, or how was it?
He had seamless sacks that he bought out of the store, put it in.
Mm-hmm. Did you have other cereals like rolled oats and cream of wheat and that sort of thing, or what did you use for cereal?
We had cornmeal, and Mother used to make part of the time just out of flour, what they called flour mush. That was the mush we had until I was about 14, and then we got rolled oats by the 100-pound sack at Payson.
This rolled oats, did you raise the oats that was rolled, or did you just buy that from the milling?
No, we just bought it sewed up in a sack.
And the cornmeal, did you raise your corn?
Yes, we raised our own corn.
How did you preserve the corn, or did you try to preserve it for winter use?
Yes. Bin for the corn.
This was dry corn. Was it still on the cob?
Yes, it left still on the cob.
And you ground it up for cornmeal before you used it, or did you take it to the mill?
They took it to the mill.
In Nephi. Did you ever eat this dry corn? Did you soak it in any way and cook it for corn similar to whole kernel corn like we have today, or did you
well,
just
we
use
used
corn?
to make hominy sometimes, but not very often, as we children didn't like it very well.
You didn't, did you cut the corn off the cob and dry it like some people have done?
Yes, you cut it off, and then when you make your hominy, you have to soak it till it's soft.
Mm-hmm. Did you buy you mentioned beans, I believe before. Did you buy your beans or did you raise them yourself?
No, Father raised beans and peas by the 2-bushel sack, and he reserved enough every time for our use.
This reserving this brings something to my mind. How did your father obtain the seed that he used for planting his crops?
Well, I don't know where he got his first seed, but after he got his seed, then he'd save it himself as long as he thought it was good. Plant it.
He saved seed from one crop and saved it over the winter and then planted it the next year. Is that
Yes,
right?
as long as he thought it was good.
Were you ever troubled with pests that ruined the crops in those
We never had any that I know
grasshoppers or
of.
anything like that?
There's a few grasshoppers, but not enough to hurt the crops.
I see. I'm also going to ask this question. Your father raised a lot of livestock. That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
How did he take care of the livestock when they were sick? Did he take care of them himself? Or?
Yes, he took care of himself. He'd get a recipe somewhere, and then he'd doctor himself.
Previously, I don't know whether we recorded this or not. You mentioned that the people used herbs a lot in treating their own illnesses. Do you remember any of the illnesses that they used to treat? I guess they had to take care of themselves all the time.
Yes.
Was there a doctor in the Mona area or around Nephi?
There was a doctor in Nephi.
And I guess he had all that country to take care of, all the people in that area to take care of, didn't he?
I suppose so. I'm not sure of that, whether there's one or two.
So I guess most of the people took care of themselves. Do you recall any of the herbs that were used for medicinal purposes?
Oh, yes, there's slippery elm. They used sagebrush for a blood medicine. They steeped sagebrush.
Sort of made a hot beverage out of
Yes.
sagebrush.
If they had a bad foot or a bad leg, well, they'd steep this sagebrush, and if it needed poultice, they'd put the leaves and all on.
I see. That's very interesting. Today we have magnificent hospitals that we go to when we're sick. You mentioned poultices. Did they use anything else for poultices? When a person had an infected finger or a boil or something like that?
Yes, my mother always used bran poultices, and she poulticed croup. She went to lots of cases of croup and put bran poultices on their feet. And she cured lots of them. They've come far in the night, 1.5 miles where they had croupy children. They was glad to have her.
I remember when I was a little boy of having a mustard plaster. Did they use mustard
Yes,
plaster?
they used mustard plaster and flour.
They used flour, and they would make this into a paste.
Yes,
like?
proportion.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the fourth mustard.
I see. And then put it on the chest for chest
Yes,
colds.
and for pneumonia. My brother had pneumonia, and we poulticed him with mustard and flour, and he got over it all right.
How could you tell when they had pneumonia?
In such pain. He can't breathe.
Grandma, have you talked about meeting Grandpa?
No.
I was wondering where you met Grandpa White.
The first time I met him, He came out for Burraston Ranch to get a load of coal, and he was 12 years old. That's the first time I ever met him.
And he was 12 and you were younger than he?
I was the same age. Then I never met him again till I was 20. I met him in Goshen when I was 20. And after I'd been in Goshen a year, then we fell in love. We went together 2 years and married.
And you lived, after you were married, where did you settle, Grandma White?
We settled in my grandmother's old adobe home for 6 months till we could get us a little brick building built.
This adobe building, where was it? Was it in Mona or Goshen?
It was in Goshen. It was my grandmother's home in Goshen.
This was your grandmother Burraston or grandmother?
Grandmother Price. Devereux.
Mm-hmm.
And what did Grandpa White do for a living?
He farmed.
And his farm was in Goshen?
It's in Goshen. He farmed his father's farm till he got one of his own, then he went on his own. His father passed away.
We've talked a little bit about Grandpa White's occupation after his Grandma and Grandpa were married and after they moved to Spanish Fork. This other voice that you're hearing is my wife, Patricia, and she's just come in, and she's very interested in asking Grandmother a few questions.
Grandma, Fred tells me that as a boy he remembers your sugar cookies more than anything else he had at Grandma's house.
Yes.
And you were saying that your family, much like the families of boys and girls today, like cookies and cakes and pies about the best of any,
Yes.
any food. Well, Grandmother, would you share your sugar cookie recipe with me since Fred likes them so much?
Yes, I will. Glad to.
Now, let's see. Let me get my pencil and paper here. Let's see now. Sugar cookies.
Yes. 2 cups of flour.
Flour.
2 level spoons of sugar, of the baking powder. And 3/4 of sugar.
3/4 cup of sugar.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Half a teaspoonful of vanilla. 2 eggs. 3/4 cup of shortening.
So there's as much sugar as there is shortening.
Mm-hmm.
And then the baking powder. Sift with your flour.
Yeah, sifted with the flour. And don't knead stiff.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we'll sure be glad to have that in our family recipe file. I'm so interested in filling my husband's stomach with things that he likes to eat.
You'll find they're nice. They keep well. Put them in a jar and they keep well.
What did you usually use to cut them with? Did you have a big cookie cutter?
I got a cookie cutter. You can have the size you want, a can you want the size.
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell you how long to bake them, but you have to bake them hard in the oven, Patricia.
Mm-hmm.
Now this oven don't bake near as good as my old stove. Of course I have to bake them longer, so you'll have to do the same.
At about 350?
Yeah, about 350. And sometimes now I have to turn it down because mine is bound too fast on the bottom and not enough on the...
Just have to kind of
So you
feel
have-
a little bit, don't
Yes,
we?
you have to try.
Feel around. Well, now I might have your recipe, but there's more to having the knack at getting it together and doing it just right.
Yes, you have to make a few times.
Mm-hmm. Get a little practice.
Yeah.
I guess during the fall, You were kept busy with bottling fruit?
Yes, awful busy. I put up lots of fruit, as you know.
Lots more than ordinarily would person would today, I imagine.
Yes.
More variety.
I always put up 60 quarter tomatoes and about 65 of peaches, about 40 of pears. Then I put up different kinds, a few plums, a few different kinds besides.
I remember my mother telling me about ground cherries and was it Potawatomi plums you were mentioning a while ago?
Yes, they're real good.
Things that we don't have nowadays very much.
Yeah, I'd like to really like to have some ground cherry preserve, but they're very scarce.
Unusual. I remember tasting them at grandmother's.
That's why I say it first. Patricia, I forgot to give you the amount of milk in those cookies. And you put a cupful to 2 cups of flour.
Cupful of milk, it is.
Yes. And if that makes them a little too dry, add a little bit more. And don't knead them too stiff.
So that the dough's quite soft.
Yes, so the dough's quite soft. Just so you can handle it nice.
Well, I'm going to try this. I sure hope I can make them.
Well, I hope you have good success.
Well, hi, Grandma. How are you? This is Laurie and Milo Grant. They've come to see you.
Hi, and did you come to see Grandma?
Can you tell Grandma hi?
Hi. Hi. Hi, Milo Grant.
Say hi, Grandma.
Milo Grant's got his mouth so full of cookies he can't talk. Whose grandma is this, Laurie? Is this our little grandma? What do we call her?
Grandma.
Our little grandma. Milo Grant, he couldn't wait. He's gone already. He's sort of an anxious little bird. Are you an anxious bird?
No.
You're not. Oh, I think you are.
No.
There's no place like Grandma's house when it comes to the grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren love you just as much as we do.
Yes, I love Grandma. I like to have them come.
Just a minute.
I've got 16 and soon another one.
16.
Great-grandchildren.
Let's see now, who's Grace Ann's baby will be your 17th?
Yes, about the 17th.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yes.
And then how many grandchildren are there? Lost count. And to think that
19 grandchildren.
And already almost 17 great.
Yes, 17 great.
And you think this all began with you and Grandpa White.
Yes.
My goodness. Doesn't take many years either, does it?
Wonderful to have a family.
I should say. And especially wonderful when you see your own children grow and progress as you'd like to have them and accomplish good things and make good men of themselves, good men and women.
Yes. Live good, clean lives, happy lives together. Love and cherish each other.
Well, we'll get a drink home to Grandma White.
You told me, Grandma, a few minutes ago that you lived by faith, that you felt like it was important to not live ahead, but to take things as they come.
Yes, that's my belief. I've always believed in that.
Well, I think if we could live in a manner like that would be saved a lot of worry, a lot of worrisome times or times when we really worry for no reason at all. Or
Yes, we borrowed trouble, Patricia. Lots of times when we shouldn't.
Laurie and Mother Grant, would you like to say goodbye to Grandma? Grandma
it certainly
White.
has been nice, Grandma, talking with you this afternoon.
Can you say goodbye?
Goodbye.
Goodbye,
And we
Mother
sure,
Vance.
and tell Grandma how much we love her. We're certainly glad that we belong to Grandma's family. So
Can you tell Grandma goodbye, Laurie?
goodbye.
Goodbye, Laurie. Come over again, won't you?
Say we will. We've got to go to dinner now, haven't we?
You going to dinner?